In this video, we will be looking at how to create an isometric piece of art using only Archicad and nothing else. If you have your own 3D model, you should be able to follow along just fine. By default, you will be in the generic perspective, but you want to go to the axonometric view. So this is the angle that I do like to use, and we are going to set up this view correctly because this is not how an isometric drawing should ideally look like. So we want to right click and we say 3D projection settings. So in the settings, you can see we have a few parameters that we can tweak. First is the appearance. So we begin with the Z axis, which is supposed to be 90 degrees, which is perfectly vertical, and then we have this Y, which should be a product of 30. So if you imagine a line, a horizontal line here, we would have 30 degrees here, which makes this angle 150 degrees. And then we have ourselves also a 30 of sorts this other side at the X axis, and there we will need to put in 30 degrees, which is pretty good for our isometric drawing. And then next is the axis length. Now this one, you want it to be in the ratio 1 to 1. So I'm going to use 1 meter, and that's because I have set my dimensions to be in millimeters. So that's why I'm going to need 1000. Okay, and then I'm going to say okay, and that is way better representation of isometric drawing. So once we have that set, we want to cut to make a 3D cutaway, and we can do that by enabling this icon right here, which is called 3D cutaway. Once I click that, you can see what was here disappeared. If I click it again, we have ourselves a pair of scissors here. So when we click, we should be able to move down and cut along the ground floor. So we will cut along the windows, and I think this is good for me. So click finalize, and that is one view, and we'll go ahead and save that view. So I'll right click and say that this is the first isometric diagram. So I'll say ISO 1 and have that created. So for the next one, once we have saved it, it should appear here in this view map. So if you go down, you can see that I have ISO 1. And then for the next one, we're going to have to reverse the cutting plane. So we're going to reverse it, and then we should see the drawings above. So we will go ahead and bring in another one down like this, and we should cut through the first floor, and somewhere along here is fine for me. I say okay, finalize, and there we have it. And then I will save this one as well by right clicking and say save as. I will say this is isometric view version 2. And as well, I want to create the next one by right clicking on this and reverse cutting plane. And then we can now see the above views, and we can drop this from above and cut alongside. That height is good for me. I say finalize, and we have ourselves that. So I'll right click again and save view, and I'm going to name this isometric diagram version 3. I say create, and it's been created. And then finally I need to reverse cutting plane again, and now we have ourselves this top part, and that needs to be saved as well. So I will save this as isometric version 4. So once we have all those 3 saved, we want to go back on the ground floor. So that is the basic way of doing it, and actually you can export this and print it out if that's what you're interested in. But because I want to put in some graphic overrides over this, I may need to change it into a 3D document. And in order to do that, I'm going to open one of them and right click and say new 3D document, and then I'm going to name this as D01, or the very first document. Okay, and now that should be created in the project map, just like this, which is a basic look of this isometric diagram. In order to simplify this drawing, I'm going to right click and I go to 3D document settings, and in here is where you can choose everything that you want to do about it. First is the uniform cut pens, so I'm going to override that, and I'm choosing blue for my case, so I will choose blue for each of these. And then once you scroll down, we also have uncut fill. So this uncut fill is going to be a uniform pen because I do not want to see so many colors. So I have undone all of it such that we do not see the color of the couch, the color of everything else. And then click uniform pen such that the rest of the pens are going to be blue as well. And then going down here, we need a shadow, which I'm going to change to 25% of my blue. Same coloring for the whole entire drawing because I want to keep it monochromatic. I say okay, and we have our very first version. But before we proceed, we have an issue here. You can see that this surface is not differentiated from this other surface. So we want to actually show that line. And in order to do that, I'm going to select the surface, which is here. You can see it's a slab. I right click and say connect and solid element operations. And we are going to choose this as the operator. And then this mesh is going to be our target. And then we will do an upward extrusion such that we can cut away that mesh, part of the mesh. And I say execute, and you should be able to see a line across there, which is much better. And before we proceed, we could actually make this place lively by adding in a human figure and some vegetation. Let's do that really quickly. So under objects, you can pick a human being. I'm going to type in here man and then choose any of these figures. So I'm going to pick a skating man and I'm going to put him in the front view, and under 2D representation I need it to be a contrasting color. So I'm going to choose like orange. I say okay and place him right there. And then as well, I need some vegetation, so you can go in the object, and I'm going to make use of a tree, and I'm going to scroll down. So we don't have actually anything native in here, but we can download and embed this one. I think this is going to work. So download and embed. And it has been added, but in representation, we need to keep it green. So I'm going to choose that and then go to the background and have it green, a lighter shade of green, and we're going to place it in here. So once we have done that, we want to make a duplicate of this because we're going to use it again with such that we save some time by trying to avoid redoing the same steps that we have just done. So we're going to make a copy of this. I'm going to right click and say duplicate 3D document, and I'm going to make the second duplicate. I say create, and of course you can see that it has been created. And now we want to go and get the second version, which is for the first floor, and then we will replace it with what we just created. So we will right click anywhere on this document, and then instead of choosing new 3D document, we want to redefine a 3D document, which is the second one that we have duplicated. We say redefine anyway, and this 3D document should be repurposed into the first floor, just like that. And obviously these objects are no longer applicable, so we need to create other versions. So I'm going to go to settings and choose a different kind of character. maybe this guy right here, and I'm putting him, making sure that this is the front view, putting him in orange just as before, and there we are. And then of course the tree as well, we need to choose a different kind of object, which is gonna be man. And we can choose woman this time. So we have it on the front view, go 2D such that we have our orange color and orange color as well. And then we should have ourselves this lady inside this building. Great. So we proceed to the next view, which is the third one. But before we do, we duplicate what we already have. So we have duplicate this and create the third version. And we can see that it has been created. And we go to the saved views, and you want to open up the third version, which is this terrace view. And then we will right click, and then we redefine 3D document. And then we select that third version such that we redefine anyway. And we have ourselves this new one. So we repurpose to have two human beings. Perhaps it's not a good idea to keep the same. So I'll pick this guy. Front view, make him into orange, just to contrast the drawing. And this guy can stay. So we have ourselves this drawing, but before we leave this one, we need to have some contours or markings on this roof, because this is the roof plan. So in order to do that, we want to go to the 3D documents, and then we have something which we can enable. And once you scroll down here, you can see something we call surface cover fill foreground. So we want to check that such that we can have definition on this surface, and as well you can see it's happening on the floor surface. Great. And then we want to make the final duplicate, which is going to be version 4. And we would have to replace it with version 4 of our 3D. We go here, right click, redefine 3D document, and then we choose this document D04, and we redefine anyway. Of course, on this one, I don't think we need these humans, so we will delete them, and then we have our thing. And just like that, we have these drawings that we can export. So under layout book, you want to create a new layout. So I'm going to select this first thing and right click and say new layout. And you can see that we have something here. So we can say it's going to be an A1. I'm going to name it as isometric art. And I say create, and you can see that a page has been created. Now by default it is picking the title block which is in the master layout, but it's fine, we can keep it, and then we can copy the drawings that we have made which are in the project map. Here on 3D document you can see we have D01 up to 4. So I'm going to copy these ones, I'm going to drag these ones and drop them in here. And just like that, we have ourselves this collection of drawings. Exciting, right? So now let's grab all of them. We want to get rid of the title, and then as well we want to rearrange them just after that. So in the settings, we have a few things that we need to change. One, under title, you want to go and say no title, such that we get rid of that line. And then as well, we want to go under frame and say fit to frame, such that we eliminate these empty spaces. So we should have something pretty clean. So now it's time to move things in the right places. So I'll select this first one, and it should be at the bottom. And then after it, we need to have this one. After that, we need to have the terrace. Finally, we need a roof above that. It's taking shape. And before we proceed, I'd like to choose a different background as opposed to the white background. So in order to do that, we need to go to document, and I'm going to use a fill for that. So this is set to background, so I'm going to change this background color to this color right here, which is a yellowish kind of thing. So I'll go ahead and draw the yellow over everything, and definitely we don't need it to cover everything, so I right click and say display order send to back. So that should be our background. Now, one thing that you should note, perhaps if you select this layout that is being placed, and we go to settings, under size and appearance, we have something here called transparent background. If that is unchecked and I say okay, you can see we have still a white background, which is not what I really want. So in case you do happen to have that, what you need to do is just to go in the settings and check that transparent background, such that you have yourself a transparent background, and then you have a defined drawing in there. Now, you need not worry about these gray lines. They just demarcate how big this drawing is, but it's not going to show in the final drawing, so don't worry about it. And so the next thing that we need to do is to add in the lines that show the broken drawing. So just pick any line, dashed long is going to work for me, and choose the color of it, something like a lighter blue color, in order to align this drawing one, and to align also the subsequent drawing, and align the roof as well. And now next to that is duplicating those lines across the entire drawing for the ground floor, first floor, and the roof. So once we have those beautiful lines, we want to actually give some information about this drawing, which is the final part. Now, in the previous videos, we did it manually, but this time we want to use zones, and that is the advantage of using zones, so they can list the spaces out for you automatically. So in order to demarcate the spaces that we're going to be using, I'm going to pick a fill, and I'm going to use a space somewhere here. This one for the first floor, and the next for the terrace. Yeah, I think they could use different colors, so I think a bright red, yeah, a pink should work, and a darker version of red should be able to work here. You can choose better colors than I can. So to gather the zone information, we want to go here under project map and go scroll down to where you see schedules, and then we have something here called elements. So you want to right click and say new schedule, and a new schedule is going to be created, and I'm going to give it a code of Z01, denoting zone 01, and it's going to be a zone list, but I can call it a space list because that's what I want to do, to list those spaces. And you can see that it has been created right here. Now in the element, you want the element to type to be under here zone, and then we need to create here a field. So let's add in a field here. You can see you can see the category of zone. Once I click here, we have a huge list of information that we can pull, and right now I want to pull in the ID, which is this zone number. I want to pull in the name, which is right here, and perhaps the calculated area, which is pretty good. But as well, you can type in what you want. For example, I would like to know the home story information. So you can see we have here home story name, and that has been added. And as well, we can add volume, why not? And then you can see here net volume right here. So let's move this home story to be above, and we want to arrange every other thing according to that. So we need to click right here such that we make this the dominance. such that we arrange everything else according to it. And then we have zone number, name, calculated area. We might need the total of this, so we click here on summation. And then we need also the sum of the volume, so we can click here on summation and say okay, and it has been created right here. So double click on it to see what has been created. And initially we have so much stuff going on here. So we have a lot of, you can see ground, and then fast, and then that we may need to show as headline. So once we click that, it appears only once. And as well, if you had a few things that were showing up more than once, you could merge, but I don't think there's anything that needs to be merged in my case. And obviously we need some space for this text to breathe. So I can double click and you can see that that becomes well spaced, and double click as well to expand that. If I zoom in here, also this calculated area needs some space, and as well we double click on the volume area in order to have it spreading out. Okay, this should be ID, not zone but space. And then we also need space name, calculated area. Should it be calculated or just area? I think it's better off to be calculated area. Even this net should be just volume, which is pretty cool. And then for the sake of our graphics, we will just maintain the blue that we did choose previously. And then we have ourselves blue. And you know what? Make sure that you change this to entire schedule, such that whatever we do is going to affect the entire schedule. Just like that. And then before we continue, I'd like to make it such that we have ground floor alone, first floor alone, and second floor alone, just like we prepared previously. And we can do that by going to the scheme settings. And in addition to the criteria that each should be a zone, we can add a criteria for the home story. You can see here, click on home story, and we say that home story equal ground floor, and that is what we need. And then you can see that the content has been reduced to that. And before we proceed, I think we need to have a much bolder summation here. So let's go to the ground total and make it bold, and we can even give it more breathing space. So we create lists for the next. So right click, create new schedule, and this is going to be a duplicate, zone 02, version 2, which is just going to be first floor. Say okay, and that has been created. Right click, new schedule, duplicate, version 3, and that is going to be made out of terrace. I say okay, and that is also been created. So if I double click here on the final one, you can see that this is a much smaller table with terrace information. Okay, great. So now let's head over to the ISO art and import in that information. So we click here on project map, and then we select all these three, drag and drop it in here. Now obviously we need to have all of these things selected, and we get rid of the title. So up in the settings, we go under title and say no title, and we arrange things in the right places. And for the sake of graphics, we want to add in the naming. So we will pick text, choose whatever you so wish, and mine is gonna be white for contrast. And I name this very first one, making sure that it is quite big enough to be in here, such that we have 1 on the ground floor, 2 as the first floor, and 3 as the terrace level. And that is it. So thank you so much for watching. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.